Hello, this is On the Stoop with Lerone Kuntz. As we all know, Norman Seabrook was found guilty of one charge. I think it was the fraud charge, and the jury is still deliberating on the conspiracy charge. Now, having sat through both trials, I can see a difference in this trial and as compared to the last trial. Okay. Now, I know a lot of people are shocked. There's a lot of different emotions going on concerning this case, as it has always been. And this is not easy for anybody, I don't think, at this point. But, you know, what I'm going to do right now is just express the difference between the two trials. You know, trying to take into account people's feelings on what happened and the questions that they may have. Like last trial, they weren't able to come to a conclusion as to whether or not he was guilty or innocent. This trial, they decided in like 2 hours that he was guilty of this one charge. How did that happen? Well, aside from it being a different jury, there were two things that were different in this trial. To me, two major things that stood out to me in this trial. First of all, you didn't have Murray Huberfeld as a defendant. There was only one person on trial, which was Norman. Last time you had Murray Huberfeld and you had Norman, and they were co-defendants. And the jury had, in order to convict them, they had to believe that these two men came together and came up with this conspiracy and bribery scheme and was part of this. It was difficult for the jury, I think, to make that connection because these two men, Norman and Murray Huberfeld, were from two totally different worlds. Murray Huberfeld is a Hasidic Jew who built a company from a kosher deli up to a investment firm that was investing $1.2 billion before it went bankrupt. And then you had a union leader from the Bronx who was a correction officer, and you know, Norman's history. These men are from two different worlds. So the jury had to believe that these two men came together in a conspiracy, and there was not a lot of evidence that these two men had a relationship. Okay, there were no pictures of Murray Huberfeld and Norman together. At least I don't remember any pictures of them together. They didn't have any telephone recordings or anything like that of these guys together. So the jury kind of felt like, hey, you know, they're saying that these guys got together, and how we don't see a connection between these two men, other than other than Jonah Resnick accusing both of them of this crime. And then the last trial, they didn't talk about the affidavit. See, that played a big role. That's the second thing that played a big role in this case. The false affidavit, the false sworn affidavit that Norman submitted in response to William Valentine's lawsuit. In the false affidavit, Norman swore that he told the other executive board members that he was going to invest $5 million from the rainy day fund into Platinum Partners. The executive board members that he said he spoke to came to court and said he never spoke to us. All of them were consistent about that he never spoke to us. We didn't know he was going to do it until after it was already done. Okay, Elias said that, Michael Maiello said that, and Amelia Warner said that they had no idea that money was going to be transferred. You see, so that made that affidavit false on that point. And then on the second point, where William Valentine was accusing Norman of taking a free trip, and in return for that free trip, he was investing that money in Platinum Partners. Norman replied to that on this sworn affidavit that the trip that he went on, that Valentine was referring to, that he paid for himself. That was a lie, because the government, the federal government, bought in the travel records. They bought in the records from the travel agency that booked the trip. They bought in the bank records from Jonah Resnick. They showed Jonah Resnick's account being debited, and the account from the travel agency being debited for the exact amounts, the same amounts, and that proved that Norman did not pay for the trip. They showed Norman's name on the manifest and everything, that he was on this trip that Jonah paid for. So that was a lie. Once they proved that Norman was a liar, then it lowered his character and his esteem or his integrity in the eyes of the jury. They saw him just as they saw Jonah, the guy who's accusing him, as people who lie to get what they want. Okay, once they were able to establish that, then it was easy for them to believe that these two men could come together and come up with this plot of robbery and money for both of them to get paid. And see, the defense was trying to say that, or trying to put forth that Norman was the victim in this, that this scam artist, this professional scam artist, Jonah Resnick, took advantage of Norman. He knew how to play up to him. He knew how to stroke his ego. He knew how to spend money. He knew how to work people for a long con so he could, get money on the back end. That was his scheme. That was his game. He had done it to other people, and he was doing it to Norman this time. But I think the prosecution was able to establish in the minds of the jury that this is Norman Seabrook. This guy is the union leader of the New York City correction officers. He deals with politicians, all types of people, all the time. He's not dumb. He's very intelligent. For the jury, for you to believe that he was taken in by this guy is not the case. That he knew what was going on. This was the prosecution was saying. He knew what was going on. He knew that Jonah wanted something, and that's why he was doing all these things for him. And in return, he wanted something in return. So they worked it out where both of them could get what they wanted. And that's what the jury had to buy into, and I think they bought into it, and that's why they came out with the verdict that they did. That affidavit hurt him, and the fact that Murray Huberfeld was no longer sort of like in the middle of everything or a distraction, because in the first case, Murray Huberfeld's lawyer painted him as this family man. He had his family there, he had his kids there, he had his community there, an icon in his community, a man who started a kosher deli, was managing the money of his community, and everybody respected him. You didn't have that element in this case. You had Norman, who started out as the iconic union leader, who had done so much for his membership, and came from a single parent family, and he was a self-made man. But once they started with the affidavit and the lies, that kind of made his character come into question in this case, and I think that hurt him. Because the question was, why would you lie? If you wanted to move $5 million to Platinum Partners. See, this is the thing about it also. The prosecution pretty much proved, to me anyway, that had Seabrook asked the executive board for permission to move the money, they probably would have gave it to him. Just learning the dynamics of the way that board functioned, that he was almost in complete control of what the executive board does. That had he sat down with them and explained to them that we could make 10% on this money that's sitting in an account making 1% if we just transferred to Platinum Partners, they probably would have said okay. But he did not ask them. And then the question is, why didn't he ask them? And that's what the prosecution was saying. Why didn't he ask them? Why? Because he was trying to hide the fact he couldn't risk them saying no, because he had already committed to this deal. And then the question arises that, okay, the trips. If they're friends and they're going to ball games together, they're going to Dominican Republic together, they're going to dinner together, they're going to cigar bars together, why didn't he just say, yeah, he's my friend, we hang out, we do things together, he paid for my trip to Israel? Why didn't he just say that? he lied and said that Jonah didn't pay for it, that he himself paid for it. And then that also begs the question, well, why did you lie about it? It makes it look like you're hiding something. And I think that's what the jury picked up on. Like, why is he hiding these things? Why is he doing this if he doesn't have anything to hide? And I think that hurt him in the eyes of the jury. And I think that's why they came to the verdict that they came to. I accept it, like I said, because these people don't know the jury. The jurors don't know Norman. They don't know Resnick. They just heard the evidence, and this is what they came with. So I have to respect that. Until I hear other evidence, I have to go with what the jury is saying. Whether they would have came out with a not guilty verdict or a guilty verdict, I would have still had to accept it. And I suggest that, you do the same. But that's just a suggestion. So in the coming weeks, I will be coming back, or the coming days, I will be coming back out. And I know emotions are like all over the place with us correction people right now. And there's going to be a lot of talk and a lot of conversations surrounding what's next and what's happening with the union and things like that. And I would like to get into some of all of these things. So, tonight, I just would like to say thanks for watching. And now more than ever, peace and stay safe.